The marketplace was alive with noise. Merchants shouted their prices, children ran between the stalls, and the smell of roasted food filled the air. People laughed, bargained, and moved in groups. But in the middle of this crowd, one figure did not belong. She was small, her clothes torn and covered in dust. Her alien features made her stand out. Pale skin with faint glowing marks along her arms, wide eyes that seemed too large for her thin face. She walked with her head low, hoping no one would notice her, yet everyone noticed. Where she passed, whispers followed. Some turned their faces away, others pulled their children closer. A fruit seller waved his hand angrily when she came near, shouting that she should move along. She did not argue. She only looked at the fruit for a moment, her stomach tight with hunger, before stepping back into the crowd. She had been walking for hours. Her feet ached, her body felt weak, and her eyes searched for even a scrap of food thrown aside. Each time she reached out, someone else pushed her away. To the people of the market, she was not just poor. She was something worse. She was different. She was a reminder of a past war, a race people no longer trusted. Her chest tightened as a group of children pointed at her and laughed. One of them threw a small stone that struck her arm. She flinched but kept moving, clutching her arm close as though to hide the mark it left. She wanted to run, but where would she go? She had no place to hide, no corner to claim as her own. Every turn brought more hostile faces. Near the center of the market, she paused by a fountain. Water sparkled in the sunlight, fresh and clean. She reached for it, hoping to cup a little in her hands. Before her fingers touched the surface, a guard stepped forward, glaring at her. "Not for you," he said, his voice sharp. She froze, then lowered her hand slowly. She turned away, her throat dry, her body aching with thirst. The day grew hotter, and the market busier. She drifted like a shadow among them, silent, ignored, unwanted. In her heart, a voice whispered the truth. She hated most. She had nowhere to belong. Her own people had cast her out, and here among humans and other traitors, she was only seen as a burden. Yet among the crowd, one pair of eyes followed her movements carefully. A human man, broad-shouldered, with a worn cloak draped across his frame, leaned against a stall. He watched as she was refused water, watched as the children mocked her, watched as she lowered her head and took each insult in silence. There was something about her that unsettled him, not because of her alien nature, but because of the emptiness in her eyes. He had seen soldiers on the battlefield with that same look, the look of someone who no longer believed in mercy. The girl moved again. She brushed past a woman carrying a basket. The woman snapped at her, calling her filth, and shoved her aside. She stumbled, nearly falling, before steadying herself. The human man clenched his jaw. Something inside him told him that if he looked away now, she would disappear into the crowd and never be seen again. The alien girl's breathing grew uneven as the sun dipped lower. She reached the far edge of the market, where broken walls cast long shadows. There, away from the noise, she slid down against the stone, pulling her knees to her chest. Her body shook with exhaustion, but no tears came. She had cried them all, out long ago. All that remained was silence. The man followed at a distance, careful not to frighten her. He stopped a few steps away, unsure of what to say. The market noise still echoed behind him, but here it felt different, quieter, heavier. He could see the truth clearly now. This girl was not dangerous, not a threat, not even a beggar. She was simply alone. In that moment, the market that had once seemed full of life now appeared cruel and cold. He realized he had a choice to make. He could walk away like everyone else, or he could step closer. His hand rested against his cloak, his heart beating hard as he took a slow breath. The girl lifted her head faintly, her eyes meeting his for the first time. In her gaze, he saw more than hunger and exhaustion. He saw a silent plea, a question. She did not dare to speak. Would anyone see her as more than an outcast? The man did not answer with words. He only stood there, caught between doubt and decision, as the sun set over the market. The night would come soon, and with it, the test of what kind of man he truly was. The sun dipped lower, casting long shadows across the marketplace. Merchants began closing their stalls, pulling down heavy cloth covers to protect their goods. The laughter and bargaining that had filled the air all day slowly faded into tired murmurs. Yet even as the market thinned, the alien girl still sat. Against the broken wall, her knees drawn close, her eyes fixed on the ground. From across the way, the human man remained. He had not left when others had turned their backs. His eyes followed her quietly as though she carried a weight no one else could see. He had spent years traveling, seen the cruelty of war, the arrogance of leaders, and the despair of refugees. But something about this childlike figure stirred him differently. It was not pity. It was recognition. He pushed off from the stall and moved closer. His boots made a steady sound against the stone path. The girl heard him and stiffened. Her wide alien eyes lifted, cautious, sharp with the instinct of someone who had been hurt too many times. Her thin fingers gripped the edge of the wall, ready to flee if he came too close. The man stopped a few paces away. His voice was low but steady. "You've had nothing to eat today." She did not answer. Her throat ached, her pride held her back, and her fear told her that kindness was always followed by cruelty. She only lowered her gaze again, waiting for him to pass like the rest. Instead, he crouched down slowly, reaching into his cloak. From inside, he pulled out a small piece of bread wrapped in cloth. He set it on the ground between them, not pushing it toward her, but leaving it where she could choose. The smell of the bread drifted through the air, warm and sharp against her hunger. Her stomach twisted, but she did not move. She remembered too well the tricks of others. A hand that offered food one moment could strike her the next. The man seemed to sense her fear. He leaned back, resting his arms on his knees, keeping his distance. "You don't have to trust me," he said softly, "but no one should go hungry in the dark." Minutes passed. The market bells rang, signaling the end of trade for the day. People walked by without glancing at them, too busy hurrying home. The girl's hands trembled. At last, she stretched forward and pulled the bread close. She ate it quickly, almost desperately, her glowing markings faintly pulsing as strength returned to her body. The man did not speak, did not reach for her, only watched with quiet patience. When she finished, she wiped her mouth with the back of her hand and stared at him, waiting for the demand that always followed. Payment, obedience, some cruel order. But none came. Instead, he asked a question that struck deeper than she expected. "Why do they treat you this way?" Her lips parted, but no sound came. She wanted to tell him, wanted to share the truth, but fear closed her throat. She turned her face away, whispering only a few words. "I don't belong." The man's jaw tightened. He had heard those words before, on battlefields where soldiers abandoned their comrades, in refugee camps where children were left to starve. He hated those words. He hated what they meant. The night wind swept through the market, carrying the scent of smoke and fading lantern light. The girl pulled her torn cloth tighter around her body. The man stood, adjusting his cloak. For a moment, it seemed as if he might walk away. She braced herself for the familiar sting of abandonment, but he did not leave. Instead, he extended his hand. His voice was calm, but there was weight in it, a promise unspoken. "Come with me, at least for tonight." Her eyes widened. No one had offered her shelter since the day she had been cast out. No one had even spoken to her as if she mattered. She stared at his hand, her chest rising and falling quickly. Trust was dangerous. Trust had cost her everything once before. Yet something in his tone cut through her fear. It was not demand, not pity, but choice. Slowly, uncertainly, she placed her small hand in his. His grip was steady, warm against her trembling fingers. Together they walked away from the emptying market. The path ahead was dark, the air cold, but for the first time in months she did not walk alone. The human stranger did not know her name, did not know her past, yet already he had broken the silence that chained her. And though doubt still lingered in her heart, A faint spark flickered in her chest, and the spark of hope, fragile but alive. The evening sky turned darker as thick clouds gathered above. The streets outside the market grew quieter, but the wind grew sharper. Dust lifted from the ground and whirled through the alleys. The alien girl walked beside the human, her steps light and uncertain. She had taken his hand back in the market, but now she kept her distance, afraid to depend too much on a kindness she still did not trust. The man said little. His eyes moved from shadow to shadow, alert for trouble. He knew this part of the settlement was not safe after dark. Thieves and guards alike prowled the streets, and either could be dangerous to someone who looked weak. He glanced at the girl. She walked with her head lowered, her shoulders tense, her torn cloth fluttering in the wind. She looked like a leaf that could be swept away at any moment. The first drops of rain fell. The girl flinched as cold water hit her skin. She pulled, her arms closed, shivering. The glowing lines across her arms flickered faintly, almost like they were reacting to the storm. The human's brow furrowed. He tightened his cloak and motioned for her to follow as he turned toward a narrow alley. The rain quickly grew heavier. The sound of water against stone echoed all around them. They hurried beneath a broken arch where part of an old building still stood. The roof had collapsed years ago, but one side remained, enough to block the wind and rain. The man led her inside. She hesitated at the edge, her bare feet touching the wet stone. "Is this safe?" she asked quietly. He nodded. "Safe enough for tonight." She stepped inside, her body trembling. She wrapped her arms around herself and lowered to the ground. The man set his pack down and pulled out a small fire kit. He struck flint against steel, sparks leaping until a flame caught on dry cloth. The fire flickered weakly at first, then grew brighter as he fed it small sticks. The girl watched the fire, her wide eyes reflecting the glow. The warmth reached her slowly, chasing away the sharp cold that had bitten at her bones. Her breathing calmed, though suspicion still lingered in her gaze. The man sat across from her, resting his back against the stone wall. He spoke in a low voice. "Storm will last until morning. We stay here tonight." She nodded but kept silent. Trust was not something she could give easily, yet the bread he had offered earlier still sat in her stomach, proof that he had not tricked her, proof that his hand had not struck her after kindness. The rain hammered harder outside. Water streamed down the walls and thunder rumbled in the distance. The girl hugged her knees and closed her eyes for a moment. Memories rushed back. The night her people had pushed her out of the village, the storm that had soaked her clothes. As she begged to be taken back, the doors that stayed closed no matter how hard she cried. Her chest tightened. She opened her eyes and looked at the human across the fire. He was calm, sharpening a small blade with a flat stone, but his presence filled the space with a strange sense of steadiness. She had been alone for so long that even silence had become heavy. Now, with him here, the silence felt different. Not empty, but protective. At last she spoke, her voice faint but steady. "Why did you help me?" The man looked up from the blade. His eyes met hers. "Because no one else would." The answer was simple, but it struck her deeper than she expected. She lowered her gaze, her throat tightening. She whispered, "You don't know me. I could be dangerous." He shrugged. "So could I, but I choose what I see, and I see someone left behind." His words lingered in the air, heavy with meaning. She pulled her torn cloth tighter around her and let the fire warm her face. For the first time in years, she did not feel completely invisible. Outside, lightning flashed across the sky, followed by a loud crack of thunder. The girl jumped at the sound, her body tensing. Without thinking, she moved closer to the fire, closer to him. He did not shift away, did not question her, only adjusted the fire to burn stronger. As the storm raged on, she felt her eyelids grow, heavy. Exhaustion pressed down on her, but for once she did not fight it. She leaned against the wall, her head dropping to her knees. The man watched as her breathing slowed, steady and calm. He kept his blade in hand, eyes on the shadows outside, ready to face whatever threat might come. She slept in the storm's roar, sheltered by stone, warmed by fire, and unknowingly guarded by a stranger who had chosen to stand where no one else had. And though she did not know it yet, this night was the first step toward something greater. She had no place to belong, but perhaps fate had led her to the one person who could change that. The storm raged until the first light of dawn. Rain poured all night, thunder rolled across the sky, and the wind howled through the cracks in the broken building. Yet inside, the fire kept its glow, and the human kept his silent watch. When the girl stirred awake, the rain had slowed to a drizzle. Her eyes opened slowly, adjusting to the dim light. For a moment she did not know where she was. The scent of smoke, the warmth of the fire, and the steady presence of the man reminded her this was not another dream. She had not been left outside in the storm. She was still alive, and someone had stayed with her. She sat up quickly, her body tense as memory rushed back. Her wide eyes darted to the man, who still sat against the wall with his cloak pulled tight. His gaze was sharp but not unkind. He nodded slightly. "Morning." She nodded back, unsure of how to respond. Her throat was dry, but she forced out a faint, "Thank you." The man studied her quietly. "You should eat more than bread. You are weak." Her eyes dropped. She pulled her knees close, her voice low. "I don't deserve food." The words made his brows tighten. "No one deserves to starve," he said firmly. Silence followed, heavy and uneasy. She wanted to believe him, but the truth weighed too heavy in her chest. She stared at the fire, her mind caught in the memories she tried so hard to bury. Finally, she whispered, "You don't understand. They were right to cast me out." The man tilted his head. "Why?" Her hands shook as she gripped the cloth around her shoulders. She had carried this secret for so long, never daring to speak it aloud. Every time she thought of it, shame pressed on her like a chain. Yet something in his voice, calm and steady, gave her the strength to let the words out. "My people. They said I was cursed," she whispered. "When I was born, the healers saw the marks on my skin, these glowing lines. They said it was a sign of weakness, a burden on the tribe. I was allowed to live only because my mother fought for me. But when she died, no one protected me anymore. They said I brought shame. They said I carried misfortune. So they sent me away." Her voice cracked. Her shoulders trembled as she turned her face away. I begged them to let me stay. I would have worked, I would have done anything, but they locked their doors. They told me to go until I disappeared." The man's jaw clenched as he listened. His hand tightened around the hilt of his blade, not in anger at her, but at the cruelty of those who had thrown her out. He had seen harsh laws and merciless leaders before, but to cast out a child for marks on her skin was something that burned in him like fire. "You were a child," he said firmly. "That was no curse, that was cowardice." Her eyes lifted slightly, surprised by the force of his words. No one had ever defended her before. No one had ever told her that the shame was not hers to carry. "You don't know what these marks mean," she said, almost pleading, as if she needed him to believe the lies her people had told. "They said I would bring disaster, that anyone near me would suffer." The man leaned forward, his eyes steady on hers. "I see no disaster. I see a girl who survived. If misfortune followed you, it is because they left you alone, not because of you." Her lips parted, but no sound came. His words cut through the years of rejection, striking a place she had thought was long dead. She felt her throat tighten, and for the first time in a long while, tears welled in her eyes. She turned her face down, her shoulders shaking. She tried to hide her tears with her hands, but her voice broke. "Why would you say that? Why would you care? You don't even know me." The man did not move closer, but his voice was steady. "Because I know what it means to be left behind. I know what it means to carry blame that is not yours." Her breath caught. She looked at him, her vision blurred by tears. There was no pity in his eyes, no disgust, only truth, sharp and unshaken. Fire crackled between them, the storm outside fading into soft rain. For the first time since she had been cast out, she felt the weight on her chest begin to lift. The secret she had carried, the shame that had chained her, was no longer hers. Alone, someone else had heard it, and instead of turning away, he stayed. She wiped her face roughly, embarrassed by her tears, but a faint spark had lit inside her. It was fragile, almost too small to notice, but it was there. The hope that maybe, just maybe, she was not cursed after all. The man pulled his cloak tighter and looked toward the fading storm. His voice was quiet but strong. "Stay close to me, whatever they said, I will see for myself." The girl's chest tightened, but this time not with fear. She nodded slowly, her heart trembling. She did not know what awaited her, but she knew one thing with certainty. This human did not see her as a curse, and for the first time she believed that perhaps she was not. By morning the storm had passed, leaving the streets muddy and littered with broken branches. The market slowly returned to life, merchants reopening their stalls, guards patrolling the square. Yet whispers spread faster than the sound of trade. People had seen the human stranger walk away with the alien outcast, and tongues wagged with suspicion. Some called him foolish, others called him reckless. A few muttered that he must have dark intentions to take her in, but none dared say it. To his face, his tall frame, steady steps, and the sharp look in his eyes kept most at a distance. Still, the weight of their judgment followed him like a shadow. The girl walked beside him, her head low, her steps hesitant. She felt the stares, pierce through her. Mothers pulled children aside, men spat on the ground as they passed. Each glance reminded her of the rejection she had suffered all her life. She almost wished the man would leave her behind so he would not carry her burden. But he did not. When a merchant hissed at her, the human stopped and stared him down until the man fell silent. When guards looked too long, he adjusted his cloak to shield her. With every step, he made his choice clear. He would not abandon her no matter what others thought. They reached the edge of the settlement where small houses stood in neat rows. Here the whispers grew louder. A woman carrying water stopped in the road, shaking her head. "You will regret this," she muttered. "The cursed should never walk with the living." The girl's chest tightened. Shame flooded her again. She pulled at the man's cloak, whispering urgently, "Please leave me here. They will hate you. They will punish you for me." The man glanced down, his jaw set. "Let them talk." Her eyes widened. "You don't understand. They will not stop. They will make you suffer." He stopped walking, turning to face her. His voice was low but unshaken. "I have suffered before. I can bear it again. What I will not do is throw you back to the cold." The firmness in his words left her silent. She lowered her gaze, torn between fear and the strange warmth his defiance gave her. As they neared his dwelling, 2 guards stepped forward, blocking the path. Their armor gleamed under the pale sun, and their hands rested on their weapons. "State your business," one demanded. His eyes flicked to the girl with sharp disdain. "Why do you bring her here? Outcasts are forbidden from staying inside these walls." The man stood tall, his cloak shifting with the wind. "She is no threat. She is under my protection." The guard sneered. "Your protection means nothing. The council has rules. That creature is cursed. If you keep her, you defy the law." The girl's heart pounded. She clutched her arms, stepping back as fear returned in full force. This was what always happened. The kindness of one moment always ended with chains or exile. She whispered desperately, "Please let me go. Before they hurt you." But the man did not move aside. His voice grew harder. "I fought for this settlement when others fled. I bled for these walls. Do not speak to me of law when you hide behind fear." The guard stiffened at his words. They knew his reputation, though they did not say it aloud. One of them muttered, "The council will hear of this." "Then let them hear," the man replied coldly. The guard stepped aside, their glares heavy but their courage thin. The girl stared at him in shock. She had never seen anyone speak against authority for her sake. Every step after that felt unreal. When they reached his home, a modest stone dwelling on the edge of the settlement, she froze at the doorway. Her feet refused to cross the threshold. "I cannot," she whispered. "This is not mine. I do not belong." The man opened the door and looked back at her. "It is mine. And now it is yours too." She stood there trembling, her chest tight with fear and disbelief. For so long, doors had closed to her. For so long, rejection had been her only companion. Yet now one door stood open, waiting for her to step inside. Her eyes filled with tears as she crossed the threshold. Inside, the air was warm, carrying the faint smell of wood smoke. The room was simple but safe. A table, a fire pit, a bed in the corner. Her hands shook as she touched the wall, her fingers brushing the rough stone as if testing whether it was real. The man set his pack down and spoke plainly. "You will stay here. No one will harm you while I breathe." The girl's voice cracked as she whispered, "Why? Why do you risk so much for me?" He looked at her for a long moment, then answered with quiet certainty, "Because humanity is not measured by fear but by the courage to protect." Her tears fell freely then, not from shame but from something new. Hope. For the first time she believed she might not be alone forever. Days passed quietly in the man's small home. The girl stayed close to the fire, helping with simple chores, though her hands often trembled with nervousness. She still flinched at every knock on the door, still feared every shadow outside. But within those stone walls, she felt a safety she had never known before. The human never treated her like a burden. He gave her food, taught her how to mend torn cloth, and asked nothing in return. Sometimes he spoke little, only watching her, with calm eyes, as though reminding her she was not invisible. Slowly she began to lift her head when she walked, though doubt never fully left her. Whispers, however, did not fade. Neighbors watched from a distance. Rumors spread to the council. Some claimed the man had lost his mind. Others said he was dangerous for defying the rules. Tension grew like a storm ready to break. One evening, as the sun fell behind the hills, the sound of boots echoed on the stone street. The girl stiffened, her heart racing. Through the window, she saw armored patrol guards approaching the house. She stepped back, fear gripping her. The man stood from his chair, his face calm but his hand resting on the hilt of his blade. He opened the door before they could knock. 3 guards stood outside, their expressions sharp with authority. The tallest one spoke. "By order of the council, the outcast must be removed at once. You have broken the law by harboring her." The girl's breath caught. She whispered, "I told you they would come." She reached for the man's arm. "Please let me go before they hurt you." But the man did not move. His voice was steady, like iron. "She is under my protection. If you want her, you will go through me." The guards exchanged glances. One smirked, his hand on his weapon. "You would risk your life for this cursed creature? She brings nothing but misfortune." The man stepped forward, his presence filling the doorway. "The only misfortune here is cowardice, the kind that casts out a child instead of showing mercy." The guards bristled. The tallest one barked, "Stand aside. Do not defy the council." The man's voice dropped lower, colder. "I have shed blood for these walls. I have buried friends in this soil. Do not speak of law to me when your law has no honor." The girl's eyes widened. She had never seen anyone stand so firm, not even her own people. Her chest tightened with fear for him, yet also with awe. The guards drew their weapons, steel, flashing in the fading light. The girl gasped, stepping back. The man drew his blade in one smooth motion, placing himself fully in front of her. His stance was unyielding, his eyes sharp. For a tense moment, silence hung in the air, broken only by the hiss of wind. The guards expected him to yield, but he did not. The fire in his eyes made them hesitate. Finally, the tallest guard lowered his weapon slightly. "This is not over. The council will not forgive this defiance." The man held his ground. "Then, let them come. I will not hand her over." The guards backed away, muttering threats as they left down the street. The man sheathed his blade and closed the door firmly. The girl stood frozen, her hands pressed to her chest. Her heart raced with fear and wonder. She whispered, "You could have been killed." He turned to her, his expression steady. "So be it. I will not betray you." Her throat tightened and tears blurred her vision. Why would you choose me over them? You owe me nothing." He looked at her with calm certainty. "Because loyalty is not owed. It is chosen. And I choose to stand with you." She covered her face with her hands, unable to stop the tears. They were not the tears of shame she had known before, but something new. For the first time in her life, someone had stood between her and the world, not because they had to, but because they wanted to. That night, as the fire burned low, she lay awake, listening to the steady sound of his breathing. The fear that had ruled her heart for years still lingered, but now another feeling grew beside it. She felt the weight of his words, the strength of his stand. The world outside still hated her, but within these walls, she was no longer alone. The human had chosen her, even at the risk of his life, and in that choice she found something she had thought was lost forever, the beginning of belonging. The settlement grew restless in the days that followed. Whispers turned to open arguments. Some neighbors warned the man to cast the girl out before the council punished him. Others crossed the street whenever he passed, as if the outcast's presence had tainted him. Yet through every insult, every glare, the man's resolve did not waver. The girl saw it all. She heard the words, felt the hatred, and watched how he stood unshaken. Her heart carried both fear and wonder. She had never known such strength. She had never been worth anyone's risk before. One evening, the man returned from the market with a small bundle. He set it on the table and unwrapped it carefully. Inside was fabric, simple but clean and new. He handed it to her without a word. Her hands trembled as she touched it. She had worn the same torn cloth for years, never dreaming of owning anything else. Slowly, she lifted the fabric against her skin, the warmth of it bringing tears to her eyes. "It is yours," the man said. "You are not a shadow in rags anymore." Her lips parted, but no words came. She pressed the cloth to her chest, her voice breaking. "No one has ever given me anything, only taken." He looked at her with calm eyes. "Then let this be the first of many." The following day, she helped sweep the floor, washed the dishes by the water barrel, and even tried cooking under his guidance. Each small act felt strange to her. She had never belonged anywhere, never had a place where her hands mattered. Yet now, when she lit the fire or stirred the pot, she felt like part of the home itself. At night, she often sat near the doorway, staring out at the stars. The marks on her arms glowed faintly in the dark, and for once she did not hide them. When the man noticed, he said nothing, only gave a small nod as if to tell her she had nothing to fear. But peace did not last long. The council sent word, demanding that the man present himself for questioning. Many expected him to bend, to finally surrender the girl. The girl herself begged him not to go. "They will punish you, they will take everything away." He placed a hand on her shoulder. "A home is not built on fear. If they wish to test me, I will face them. But I will not give you up." Her chest ached with both terror and pride. For so long she had been told she was cursed, unwanted, unworthy. Yet here stood a man who would face an entire council for her sake. When the day came, he stood before the council chamber with the girl beside him. The hall was filled with sharp eyes and cold voices. The council leader demanded answers. "Why do you defy our law? Why protect what is cursed?" The man's voice carried through the hall, steady as stone. "Because your law is built on fear, not truth. You call her cursed, yet I have seen only courage in her. You call her dangerous, yet she has harmed no one. If humanity means anything, it is to protect those who cannot stand alone." The hall fell silent. The people who had gathered to watch murmured among themselves. Some sneered, others looked uncertain. But one truth could not be denied. He had spoken with conviction, and no one could break that. The council did not answer. They dismissed him coldly, saying the matter would remain under watch. But as he walked out with the girl, heads turned, not all in hatred this time. Some eyes carried doubt, some even carried respect. That night, back at the stone dwelling, the girl placed her new cloth on the bed and sat down slowly. Her eyes shimmered as she looked around the small room. "This is my home," she whispered, almost afraid to believe it. The man gave a small smile. "It has been yours from the moment you stepped inside." Her throat tightened and she pressed, her hands together. For years she had lived with emptiness, believing she had nowhere to belong. Now for the first time she had walls to shelter her, food to eat, and someone who stood beside her no matter the cost. She raised her eyes to him, voice trembling but clear. "You gave me more than a home. You gave me back my life." The fire crackled, the night calm outside. In that moment, the weight of loneliness lifted from her shoulders. She was no longer an outcast, no longer cursed. She had found what she thought impossible, a family, forged not by blood, but by choice. And, in her heart, she knew this truth. One human had given her a place in the universe, and she would never again be without a home.